Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Ivil Say Orway Update. So, I feel it necessary to talk to you today about some very serious subject matter. As much as my introduction is comical and silly, the content of this program is generally very serious, and never more serious than it is right now. So, we've been targeted and demonized, labeled and shunned as Trump supporters through the entire presidency of Donald Trump. And now that he is gone from the scene and we have this new elected president, then they seem to be doubling down on targeting us as a class of people. And that's going on, and it's almost a distraction from what's really going on. And I think some people, maybe you included, I know I was, are missing what's really going on. I'm so focused on the fact that Democratic senators and congressmen and certain members of the press and pundits and former military generals and former CIA operatives are now on social media, on television, making public statements that Trump supporters and Republicans and conservatives and Christians and gun owners, that we are all enemies of the state, and that we should be considered equal to foreign combatants, and that they should use insurgency techniques to fight against Trump supporters. That is, to me, very frightening, and it's easy for me to get tunnel vision in the middle of a conflict and miss the fact that I'm being flanked. So what I want to talk about today in as clear language as I can get away with, I want to talk about why certain decisions are being made the way they are, and what to expect in the future. What is the grand master plan? So if you want to hear the angry outbursts about some of the stuff I'm talking about, if you want to hear it in pure unadulterated rage, you'll have to hop over to my alternative media sites, like over at Rumble, where I'm getting ready to upload a Ivil Say Orway by its proper name over there, where I've got a little more freedom. But the thing that people are missing, I believe, is the connection to China. So let's look at the Chinese connection. Clearly, the Democrats are pro-Chinese and anti-Russian. So the Democrats accused Donald Trump of being in bed with the Russians, when all things indicate, all information and facts seem to indicate that the Democrats are in bed with the Chinese. And people used to think that the Chinese and the Russians were allies. But really, they began to see each other as roadblocks to global domination. I don't see a time in the future where Russia and China would ever agree to share power. Sharing power is not what the Chinese are about. They're about global domination. They are embodied in the silly little cartoon of Pinky and the Brain. What are we going to do tonight, Brain? Well, Pinky, we're going to do the same thing we do every night. We're going to try and take over the world. This is the Chinese ambition. This is why the Chinese are building artificial islands in the South China Sea. This is why the Chinese are engaged in open trade warfare and propaganda war in Australia. This is why the Australians and the New Zealanders are more awake to the Chinese issue than we are, because it's happening closer to them. The Philippines have independent, autonomous islands that are loosely associated with the Philippines, but had individual rule. And the Chinese simply would come in and buy the rights to govern the island from the rulers in cash, in basically bundles of cash, suitcases full of cash. And the president or the leader of these small little islands that surround the Philippines just gave them a deed to the Chinese and split to spend the money and left the people to deal with this Chinese takeover. The Chinese are taking over everything, and they've had their sights set on America for a very long time. Why do you think so many of our politicians have willingly and eagerly leveraged through loans and borrowing our entire nation? Our entire nation is in debt to a number that is unbelievable. There hasn't been a balanced budget since Bill Clinton balanced it, if memory serves correctly. And that would be before some of you, many of you, were ever even born. So, why? Why would people that claim to love America keep spending America into debt year after year, decade after decade? Why would they blow money and spread it around the globe like it's free money, like we can just give money to Pakistan for transgender studies, right? But somehow we can't feed our own people. We can give money away for midnight basketball. We can pay for certain surgeries for certain protected subclasses of people if they're in the military, and now they're back in the military. So we get to pay for their reassignment surgeries. And all of this is at the price of going into debt. America is hopelessly, irreversibly, and unbelievably in debt. And the primary owner of our debt, unfortunately, seems to be the Chinese. The Chinese not only own our debt, they own a great portion of the country. They are interest holders in institutions like Major League Ball, Major League Basketball, football. In one way or another, they're in control of so many of our institutions. Our universities have been infiltrated by Chinese operatives. And so not only is China, in my opinion, bribing and blackmailing American politicians into borrowing America into the poorhouse. Not only is China doing that, they are also, look what the Chinese operative did to Swalwell, the congressman out of California. He literally was sleeping with the enemy. And so China clearly has 100 or 200 year plan to take America down, and they've been working it for more than half a century. And America's asleep at the wheel because the wool is being pulled over our eyes by a press that is primarily owned and operated, controlled through bribery, through extortion, and through outright ownership. The mainstream media, the place where Americans used to exclusively get their news, is now filled with anti-American, pro-Chinese, communist propaganda, where America is portrayed as being evil and its history as not a heroic tale of a country who pulls itself up by the bootstraps to rule the world, but rather that we are some kind of evil empire that deserves to be destroyed. It's Chinese propaganda. So the Ivil Say Orway itself, the engineered, ginned-up conflict to separate us, is also part of the Chinese master plan. The Igraid Otvay on the Ixthay, the day of the Ayat Ray that they were calling an insurrection, on that day, we certified a Chinese communist rat as president of the United States. And he raised his hand before the country, and one of our turncoat, traitorous Supreme Court justices swore him in, and we became a vassal state to China. Probably one of the most disturbing elements of the Chinese connection is Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's desire to possess the nuclear football. So, just to clarify, the nuclear football is kind of a code name or slang for the little briefcase that has the launch codes and all of the electronic mechanism required for the President of the United States to at any moment launch a nuclear strike anywhere in the world against any enemy at any moment, and he just has to have that football. And so when Trump had been impeached hastily there at the very end of his presidency over the events of January 6th, when the House had filed their impeachment but hadn't turned it over to the Senate yet, Nancy Pelosi went to the generals, rather, of the military, the Joint Chiefs of, and she asked them if they would ignore any attack or military orders given by Donald Trump until after the 20th. That they would just ignore him if he ordered an attack anywhere in the world. And of course the generals told her that would be treason, so no, we won't be doing that. Whatever the President of the United States tells us to do is what we will do. Anything short of that, as long as it's a lawful order, anything short of that is treason. So no, Nancy, we will do whatever the President says. And then now recently there's been this move headed up by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and several others. And their intention is to, what they're trying to do is get control of the nuclear football away from Biden. And they're saying that even though the Constitution is very clear about who the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military is supposed to be, Nancy and Chuck and people over there think they're smarter than the Constitution, and they think it's crazy that one person should have all of that power. So they want to turn the control of the nuclear football, control of the command and control of our nuclear arsenal over to a committee headed up by, of course, by her and Chuck, and how they're the ones that should make that kind of decision, not Biden. This could be a potential setup for the 25th Amendment to remove Biden from the presidency, but really it's just the unadulterated, unconstitutional hunger for power that you see exhibited by the Democrats, and as it is embodied in the person of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They don't believe anybody, even their own guy, should be president. They want to have shared power. They want to run our country by committee. So the biggest scary thing of the Chinese connection is that potentially one of the reasons why they want to hold up our ability to respond to a nuclear threat, one of the reasons why Nancy and Chuck might want to throw a little grime and grit into the machine work that is a response to a potential threat is because they are in bed with the Chinese. And what scares me the most about all of this is that the Chinese are possibly, potentially poised to attack us. And if they can get their people on the inside to hold up any kind of response and make it more complicated, then they will have a plausible deniability as to why we didn't strike suddenly in an immediate retaliation against some outside strike. And I think it also might be because the strike that China has planned for us is not a nuclear strike, but rather an EMP, which past presidents have said would be seen as a nuclear attack anyway, and the response would be with nuclear weapons. So the response of an EMP threat against the United States, or an EMP attack against the United States, is in fact, by our own strategy, nuclear retaliation. So if they can pause, slow down, or muck up that nuclear response, immediate response to the EMP, potentially, this is all guesswork, but it does seem scary to me that these people who I'm associating for many reasons directly with Xi Jinping, and I'm concerned that they want control of the nukes. Why does Nancy want control of the nukes? This is the big picture that people are missing. While we're worried about the purge that is inevitably coming, the purge that always comes with every communist takeover, we're missing the fact that this is not, in fact, brother against brother. That if a handful of brainwashed and misinformed people end up joining the communist enemy, that still doesn't really make it a Ivil Say Orway. What we're really looking at is World War III and a global conflict with China. God save our republic.
Wolverine!